Okay, wanted to welcome everyone to today's Tech Talk. If you have not joined us before for a Tech Talk, these are nice conversational, informal Tech Talks that we do each month. And today's Tech Talk topic, say that fast 3 times,
Yeah, for
is,
sure.
is how to increase job site safety and compliance. And before we get into today's topic, I have a couple of small housekeeping items that I'd like to go over with you all. And to begin with, this is a recorded event, so we have this available later on our website as well as our YouTube channel for you to watch or rewatch at your leisure. We do encourage that anybody submit any questions through the question and answer feature on Zoom or through the chat feature that we'll also be monitoring. So if you have any questions like that, we will hold those till the end, but please go ahead and submit them at any time, and we'll go ahead and do our best to try to get to them as soon as we can. And my name is Scott Englert. I am the Director of Marketing Operations here at Axsoft. And I have a wonderful guest speaker that is going to help me with today's Tech Talk. And I'd love to introduce him to you now. His name is also Scott, but Scott Barbieri. And he is the account manager for sales and has been with Axsoft for 6 years now. Fantastic. I've worked with him all 6 of those years, which is great. And one fun fact about Scott is that he has raced motorcycles in the past. And I always would walk by his desk and see a picture of him, going around a racetrack with his knee on the ground and say, whoa, what's going on there? So I think we've had a few discussions of it, but Scott, how did you get involved in that, and how did that come about?
Yeah, well, thanks, Scott. The motorcycle thing was kind of a natural progression for me. I, of course, was born in the 80s, so I grew up in the 90s, and of course was driving Honda cars all hooked up, and enjoyed the speed that came with it. So eventually I migrated over to motorcycles, thinking that would be a great idea as a young 20-year-old, which it's not. But I was fortunate very quickly into my escapades into riding motorcycles. I kind of linked up or hooked up with this group of other riders who were really big into safety, right? Wearing the proper clothing, and were really interested in the advanced mechanics of advanced riding in that. So I learned how to ride safely, but still have a lot of fun. And then eventually I came with them out to up in New Hampshire to Loudon to racetrack up there, and started riding on the track and racing on the track. And then it kind of just progressed to I've ridden on all different tracks all down the east coast of the U.S. and have a couple trophies at home, that I like to keep polished up every once in a while. But it was a really great learning experience, learning how to ride, a motorcycle at kind of its limit like that, but still doing it as safely as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really awesome. In my limited motorcycle riding experience, one of my biggest pet peeves that I have is because I no longer own a motorcycle, but when I'm driving around in my car and I see riders without proper safety equipment, riding around in flip-flops and shorts and
Yes.
no helmet, and the whole, it really drives me kind of bonkers. It's like, man.
Yep.
Oh,
The less gear they're riding, the more aggressive they're being, right?
and that's so true.
Right.
Yes, lane splitting, going by at 100 and some odd miles an hour, and it's like, wow, yeah. And especially, as Florida drivers are not always the best. So
no, coming to Florida is really what turned me off from riding. I was living in Connecticut at the time when I got into it, so it was more like a summer thing. But when I came down here, and the heat and the bugs and way more traffic and all that, it was a big no. So I get that completely.
Absolutely. Well, if you stay on the track, then you don't have to deal with any of that. But
right, exactly.
Yeah.
And there's always one, if not two, ambulance crews right nearby. So if you do have a fall off or something, you have people addressing you, within minutes. So it's definitely a much safer way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, very cool. Well, thank you for sharing some of your experiences in that. I find it interesting. Hopefully some of our attendees do as well. So
we'll have to talk more later.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So let's get right into it, and let's talk about our topic. And I mean, I'm just going to throw it out there, and as far as the topic goes, and how do we and increase job safety and compliance? I mean, that's the big question, and so maybe let's start with some tips on that to begin with.
Yeah, no, for sure. Job safety and compliance is something that a lot of our existing customers come to us to talk to us about how they can do better with it or do it more efficiently. And then, of course, as we're talking to potentially new customers with it, this comes up a lot as well. So it's definitely something that is on a lot of businesses' minds. And not only the businesses, but I'd imagine the employees as well, right? The workers out in the field. And when it comes down to the job safety and the compliance part of it, nothing is going to slow down your work site faster than an injury, unfortunately. And even once that person who was injured, right, maybe they, tripped over something, tripped over a hazard, or if a company is doing, anything with digging or putting holes in and someone doesn't pay attention to it, and they fall in, right, sure, they're going to be addressed quickly and they'll have medical care given to them, pretty quickly, but the whole work site is going to stop when that happens. And then even once that person is okay, it's still on the mind of all the other employees around them who were there that day, because those things really stick to you, right? And of course, as they're thinking about it, then productivity goes down, and everyone's a little extra cautious, and work slows down too much. So what we have found is using our solution, you can help build a plan for your employees, right? The two biggest tips is have a safety plan so all your workers are on the same page. They understand the dangers of the working environment. They understand the dangers of the chemicals or the equipment they're using, and then make sure you're educating them as well, right? And that's why we see a lot of safety briefings or tailgate meetings, sometimes they're called, where the supervisors and those can go over all the safety items and make sure everyone's okay. But you also have to make sure that they're listening to you and they actually understand what those dangers really are. And a lot of our accounts, of course, have started bringing in safety briefings that are, on paper, which is good, right? They can pass it around between each other, but you don't really know who's really seen the paper or if anybody understands it. And as you start bringing it into more of a digital solution where, it's popping up on their phones, they're getting a notification about it where they can read the safety briefing and then of course have them sign off on it, and then maybe add an additional, text field or two where they can ask questions or get follow-up on it, really expands on the knowledge and the plan that you're creating for your employees.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a little bit more of not only a preemptive, but also kind of what's the right term for it? I guess CYA type of
Yeah.
actions as well. Where you are making sure that everybody is understanding exactly what is being said, and that they sign off on it. So there's some accountability there. I think that was the word I was looking for.
Yes.
Accountability. Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
absolutely. Yeah, you want
Yeah.
to make sure everyone is accountable for it, right? The employees are accountable for understanding, what the safety issues are and how to address them and really how to avoid them. And then also accountability for the business itself, because the business is, liable if they don't educate their employees enough or they don't create a safe work environment. Of course, no business wants to deal with lawsuits or anything along those lines. So, being, like you said, being preemptive about it, addressing it ahead of time is definitely a much smarter business decision than trying to deal with the after effects if you haven't, helped your employees understand safety and being compliant with the safety codes.
Yeah, absolutely. And even for some of the business out there that have to adhere to, let's say, OSHA standards, things like that, we can create forms that, you know, mark off exactly those checklist items where, we have to make sure that, okay, did I check this? Did I check that? And
Yeah.
then as the employee goes through and marks those off and signs off on it, then they're, complying to those OSHA safety regulations, which is great. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, if OSHA ever comes in and they need to see any of that paperwork, just being able to pull up all your digital files, which with each employee and each checklist and each signature goes a long way to making sure you stay compliant and you're experiencing any extra delays or fines or anything along those lines.
Mhm. Yeah, I'll bring up a story about that a little bit later on, because it's an interesting one. But yeah, so but
Yeah.
it may be a little long, so we'll see if we have time for it later.
Sounds good.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk a little bit about how some businesses can maybe enhance those safety and compliance strategies. It's like maybe some tips for that as well.
Yep. Yeah, so when you're trying to enhance it, really it's making sure that the right information is getting in front of the employees correctly, and it's there enough for them to be able to, understand it and then be able to apply it to the workday that they're in, right? You can read about the hazards of a chemical, but if you never come across that chemical, right, you're probably going to forget about it. But if you've read it and you see it on the job site, um, then whether you need special gloves or if you should just really stay away from it because it's not part of what you're doing. So what we've really seen for the enhancement part of it through Teamworks is really using the form workflows, which not many people are probably aware what that is. That allows you to take any form, right, any piece of paper that normally they would have been, reading at the job site, or maybe it was hooked onto a clipboard, and you can actually take those forms or those papers, including like the safety guidelines, the OSHA checklists, and you can actually send it to, whether it's from the admin in the office or your safety compliance officer in the office, or if it's someone that's on job site, and they can send that paperwork to each individual employee, right? And their Teamworks app is going to buzz on their phone. They can open it up, they can read all those guidelines. And of course, like I was saying before, let's add in a signature page so you can get that compliance from everybody and help you with the liability part where your employees sign off that they've read it and they understand it. And then, of course, adding in text fields in that so they can ask additional questions, right? Because when you send that form to them and they read it, they sign it, they can then input additional questions and then send it back. And that's going right back to their supervisor in real time, or maybe it's going to your safety coordinator at the office in real time. They can immediately see those questions and then address it with them, right? But if you're doing this in a paper format, or if you're just hosting, your tailgate meetings, right, that employee may not be able to get back to the safety officer or to anyone to ask those questions for, a day or multiple days, or maybe by that point they forget about it. And then of course they find themselves in a tough situation when they get injured because they forgot to ask those follow-up questions. So, and then of course, like you mentioned before with OSHA, or, whether it's a lawsuit or anything liability wise, again, having those digital copies that you can produce, on demand right away is a big part of protecting yourself from the liability. One of the stories I hear a lot from customers, whether it's on safety regulations like we're talking about now, or just any paper form, right? One of the complaints that comes up often is that they have employees who are driving that paperwork back to the office from the work site. This may not happen every day. Maybe it's once a week they're bringing all this paperwork back, and you're really talking about like a stack of paperwork at that time. And then they're driving with the window open or something along those lines, and paperwork is flying out of the truck, right? The first time I heard that in one of our training sessions when I first started here, I thought that was kind of like a funny story that they tell in training, right? But as I've continued talking to all these businesses, you hear the same complaint all the time, whether it's flying out a window or they're getting, ketchup mustard stains on it, or anything along those lines. So again, moving into a digital format, you alleviate all those problems, right? Nobody has to drive back to drop it off. You don't have to worry about if it's legible or if there's stains on it, anything like that, because it's all flowing back into the portal in real time.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Eliminate those mistakes at the source, and then you don't have to try and figure them out later on. One of my favorite features of the forms is that we can have selections based off of previous questions that are asked, so it's not going to show you items in a drop down that don't apply to the thing that you previously talked about. So
yep.
eliminating those mistakes and possible mistakes is saves so much time later on with trying to track that stuff down, trying to track down what was the correct answer that was supposed to be on this form, etc. Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, the decision logic in that is definitely really big, right? Let's make sure you're only capturing the information you truly need to capture that's, beneficial to your business.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, and we've definitely found that doing it this way helps really generate more buy-in from the employees, right? Because if you have a whole bunch of workers out on a job site and there's been accidents or injuries, right? Of course, their focus is going to be on that because nobody wants to get injured in the
Yeah.
workplace, right? I don't
Yeah.
care what pay you get, it's not worth the injury. But when your employees feel confident in your safety plan and they understand all the strategies you're putting in place to them, they're much more productive, right? They're much more, I don't want to say relaxed, but they're not, right? When they're aware of the dangers, they can just kind of spot it real quick and move away or adjust as they need to. Versus a work site where there isn't really a whole lot of safety briefings and no one really trusts the guy next to them or the person next to them, or maybe they're using equipment and they haven't been briefed on how to use that equipment properly. And that heavy equipment is dangerous. So the more your employees are confident in you and confident in the safety plan and that you're following safety guidelines, the more buy-in you're going to have for them to be more productive during the job site. And we know budgeting is really huge when it comes to job sites and the work. And if you can actually be ahead of the work a little bit instead of always being behind, that will make a big difference in your business's cash flow, down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. So it really sounds like they're building a safety first culture in the company, by doing these things and kind of making sure that safety is a priority and like you said, that kind of trustworthiness, which is great.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit of, well, we talked pretty heavily on some forms, digital forms and how those can help with the safety and compliance and stuff. So are there any other digital tools that can help with this type of to enhance the safety process that we may have, or et cetera?
Yeah, definitely. Forms for me is always really big because I think it's just a really powerful tool, especially with some of the more advanced features we've added in the last year or so. You can see some of the really same benefits using dispatching, right? We always think of dispatching as just dispatching orders or telling people where to go, right? But you could also dispatch out an order to your supervisor or your safety compliance officer and say, hey, there's some new guidelines in regards to some of the chemicals we have on that site. Please review these and then talk with your team, right? And you're ensuring you're getting that information in front of them because again, they're going to get those notifications on their phone that say, hey, look, you have a new order, you have new messages from the office. That company messaging that is built in there so that your employees can message back and forth from the field to the office is really big for that as well. And then, of course, in the cases where there is an injury or something that's going on, being able to use the live view to see exactly where on the job site the employees are, and then being able to direct emergency services over to them. As most people in this line of business, whether you're in construction or anything that's involved in building out work sites, is a lot of times those work sites aren't by the main road, right? And those work sites
Oh
can
yeah.
be huge, right? Think
Yeah.
about
Oh, yeah.
building like a mall or a large apartment complex, right? That's a lot of land to cover, and you can give exact details to emergency services, or if you have someone on site who can provide medical treatment, to be able to find them, help them and get access to them a lot quicker. So I
Yeah,
definitely think you
absolutely.
can integrate most of the features in the platform for safety. Maybe,
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
not timekeeping, but certainly the forms, the live view, and even dispatching out, like we said, the safety guidelines and that to the supervisors would be pretty helpful.
Right, right. Yeah, and so with timekeeping, maybe something as simple as just knowing that who is on site and who's not, with
Yeah,
having timekeeping integrated into there, as well as kind of the GPS timestamp, when they clock in and out.
exactly.
Just being able to know, okay, who do I have to inform of things, et cetera. And actually, to
Right.
follow up on something that you had mentioned, which is the intercompany messaging, if there is something that is needed to go out to the entire field of workers, you have that group messaging where you can send out a notification that, oh, hey, a chemical spill happened, or something very important that everybody needs to know right away. You can
Yeah.
do that with group messaging, which is great.
Right, exactly. And you're not hunting down everyone's phone numbers and trying to make sure you
Exactly.
message each one without a typo, which I'm certainly terrible at. And you even made me think of something too, like even on the timekeeping piece, right? We've seen with a lot of like our cleaning companies and HVAC and electrical companies, they'll add in additional fields, to ask, hey, was there anything about your jobs today or your work today that you think we should be aware of? and this for another tech talk, but I have a cleaning company that actually added that, and the feedback they got was amazing. So even with your construction workers or anyone working on a job site, when they go to clock out, you had a field and they were like, hey, is there anything you think we should know about from your day's work, right? And it's private, right? And no one else is going to see it but the admin. And then you can have your employees kind of giving some feedback back to it. So maybe the office isn't aware that something was being handled not quite out of compliance, but pretty close, and it was enough to make your employees nervous about it. So they report it. And then of course the action in that could be coached and addressed ahead of time before it becomes a bigger problem.
Right, exactly. And those people that are on the ground and are around those areas, they could see something that is not right, report that, and you would never know, being back at the office without that feedback, which is, yeah, absolutely. That's pretty awesome. That's pretty immeasurable. Yeah,
Yeah,
very
agreed.
nice, very nice. Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, I think we talked a lot about how some of these items can help. So speaking of teamwork in particular, we talked about wireless forms, to some of the job dispatching, how that can help in different ways as well. Intercompany messaging, and it touched a little bit on the GPS tracking, maybe even talking about some of the geofencing that we could possibly use in locating people, knowing exactly where they're at if they're in areas that they're not supposed to be, which also could cause safety issues as well. Maybe I didn't know if there was anything further that you wanted to touch on from the teamwork side of things.
Yeah.
Because all these things that we've talked about are included in the teamwork's kind of suite.
Yeah, they are, right.
Hmm.
All included, exactly.
Yeah.
Your geofencing comment to me is really interesting, because what if you have a worker, right, who for whatever reason just kind of goes off the beaten path, right? Maybe they're digging a trench, or you're laying cable, right? Obviously the laying cable in the ground is big business these days, getting all that wonderful high speed internet out to all of us.
Sure.
But what if you have a worker who kind of went off the beaten path from the work site, but still end up falling into, a trench or maybe a ditch or something like that, and they're far enough away that no one can hear them when they're yelling for help, right? But if you have a geofence set up, right, you can set up a notification that every time somebody leaves it or if they enter it, so that the admins or the safety coordinator can look at the report and say, okay, I had 15 workers come into the geofence in the morning, and then I had 14 of them leave at night. Who's that last person, right? If everyone had packed up their stuff and they didn't realize that person was missing, or maybe they thought they had gone home early or wasn't feeling well, something like that, you could end up leaving a worker stranded there.
Yeah.
But if you had this report to take a look at each night, make sure the same amount came off that came on, would let you help you address it.
Exactly.
And of course, we talked about GPS tracking on the handsets, which will bring you to that person. But you could still have the same type of issue if someone's using a piece of equipment, right? If they're using a bulldozer or something in those lines, or if they're driving a company vehicle, same thing. If that person hasn't reported back to work, you can take a look and see where that equipment last was, or where that vehicle was. And you and I both know over the years, we've had numerous customers call and say, hey, we or a guy got in an accident, we're trying to find them. Can guys help them, right? When they're in that panic mode, right? And you can log in and you can see exactly where that vehicle was, and you can flip on Google Satellite and you can see exactly what that road looked like. And again, you can start directing people over to it.
Hmm.
Outside of the safety side of it, now, of course, for your equipment, if you need to know the runtime for all your equipment, or know where all the equipment is, because we know that sometimes crew workers will hide a piece of equipment that they need in a day or two, so that they don't get behind on their work, even though there's other job sites that need that equipment now. So you can address the usage and location of that there as well.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, very, very, yeah, important stuff that just can be little, in the overall grand scheme of things. It's pretty big. So
Yep.
yeah, yeah, very nice, awesome. Well, it's time for story time. I think we have time for it. So I just kind of wanted to go back to a little bit to the OSHA stuff. And one thing that I really kind of opened my eyes and stuck with me over the years. So we headed out to a customer of ours, a very good customer that we were doing a video case study on. So we're going out to interview them and see how they were using the software and how it was helping them in their business. And after the interview, we had turned off all the cameras and everything, and he said, the CEO of the company said, listen, I wanted to talk to you guys off the record, and let you know that we had an issue. It was a roofing company, and they unfortunately had a very serious injury on a job site, and the OSHA came in and talked to them, and because of the form that they had set up, which was a safety checklist form that the employee had gone through, checked everything, that he had all of the safety equipment was latched on, everything like that, signed off on it. And unfortunately, he had not done those things, but he had checked off on it and signed off that he did. That he basically said that you guys saved our business completely. I would have completely lost our business. We would have gone under with the the lawsuits, et cetera, that would have come from it. So he was kind of thanking us on the down low, but of course I won't get into who it was or anything like that, but it was a really, really eye-opening, like, wow, something that it seems so small, but is so important to businesses and their
Right.
liability.
Yep.
So yeah, it's just, a big thing. That's a big thing. So
No, you're right. Yeah, that liability is huge, and the OSHA fines are huge, and of course, lawsuits are ridiculous. And
sure,
you think of the business as just this entity, right? Just a business, but really that's everyone's livelihood. Right? Whether
absolutely.
there's 10 employees there, 100 employees there, or 1,000, right? You get that business gets hit with an expense that large unexpectedly,
Mhm.
and their work sites are shut down. So their cash flow is basically limited, right? All those
Yeah,
people's lives and everything everyone is into is just in jeopardy. So
yeah,
it doesn't take a
absolutely.
lot to protect that.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And yeah, like you said, it seems like a small thing to protect it, but it's really a huge thing in the long run if something ends up happening. So yeah, for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay.
Good story.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, like I said, it was something that really stuck with me, and I tend to tell it when it's applicable, but
Yes.
yeah, for sure. Um, so we're gonna hop over and see if there are any questions from the audience here. So let's see. Uh, looks like we have one that we can do here.
Sure.
Let me read through it real quickly here to see if there's something that I can uh, make it a little bit easier to say. Okay. So okay. Well, we kind of covered that one a little bit. Well, they're talking about, so what role does strong communication play
Oh, yeah.
in that safety first culture that we were talking about?
Yeah.
So
No,
maybe we can expand upon it a little bit.
yeah, for sure. I think that's a wonderful question, and I think that communication and transparency has been really big with a lot of businesses over the last few years. And I think in most cases, most businesses, ours included, has realized that having strong or stronger communication is really beneficial to the whole company as a whole,
Mhm.
right? So in the case of like job safety, of course, strong communication will make it easier for emergencies to be identified and, of course, acted upon quickly, right? Whether it's addressing what the emergency could be ahead of time or, of course, bringing in emergency services and that is needed. But when you have a direct line of communication, from the field to the office or vice versa, right? And that includes your safety compliance checklists and your officers,
Mhm.
and that they're able to review all that information in near real time, right? You're no longer starting to address a problem at the end of the day, when you thought you were headed home, right? You can address it right then and there. And then, of course, any assistance is needed. If managers are in a better position, then their employees are going to trust them more, and you're going to get better productivity out of them. And they'll feel much more comfortable asking questions about it, right? If you're the new person on a job site and you're reading safety briefings, but you're not comfortable asking questions because you're afraid you're going to get in trouble, right? Again, being able to communicate that, securely through the app or through a form is
Mhm.
going to grow their confidence so that when they are in the safety meetings, maybe they don't even have to wait to see it on the app. They can go up and talk to people a little bit more honestly about it, and they can express their concerns of the site or look for tips from some of the veterans on how to keep themselves safe.
Exactly.
But all of that just boils down to communication. And if you're not talking, they're not talking, and you're going to find yourself in some hot water at some point.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Just being able to be comfortable with the trust of everyone around you, to ask the right questions that are necessary to keep yourself safe. Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, that's great. Well, fantastic. So wanted to take a moment to tell you guys a little bit before we wrap up here about a promotion that we have going on. Right now, we have it's something that we're doing with it, which is a free trial of Teamworks for a total of 14 days, so 2 weeks. And one of the coolest things about this is that it's not a watered down light version of the software. It is the real deal. You get every feature that we talked about, everything that you would get from a regular account with us, and we set you all up and get you rolling with the proper setup, I guess is the right way to say it.
Implementation.
Implementation. There you go. Yes, the right implementation from our team, and really give you an opportunity to try out some of these features and see how they would benefit your not only your business but also your safety and some of the things that we talked about today. So if you're interested in doing that, you can go to our website at axoff.com, and there's a banner right up at the top that says try it for free, and click there and we'll get you all set up. So we'd love to show you the stuff. All right. So that pretty much does it for this month's Tech Talk. We really appreciate you all joining us. I wanted to thank Scott profusely. I mean, the wealth of knowledge that you have is fantastic. I love all of the stories that you shared with customers from the field, and it's great to hear. So thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insight with us.
You bet. Thank you so much for hosting me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you to everybody who was out there attending today. And once again, this will be available as a recording on our YouTube as well as our website by tomorrow. It should be up today, but there's a possibility it'll be there tomorrow. So go ahead and check it out. All right. Thank you guys so much. Until next time.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks. Take care.